So essentially, you were already planning on going into the fund equity for about a quarter of what you had,
Yeah.
but now, if you didn't make any kind of adjustments on your expenditures, you would end up losing half of it.
Yeah.
If the state does take around 218 to 220
Yes.
off your foundation grant. If we assume that the state, is going to make that cut and you're not going to get the money along with other school districts, what's your plans on addressing this situation in the coming weeks?
Well, the first step will be informing all of the stakeholders, and I have a meeting set already for the end of October. I've got a meeting date, and I'm beginning to notify. It'll have representatives of the Board of Education, all the bargaining units that represent, the unionized employees in the district. I'm also going to bring some parents into the process, and we'll be looking at possible some other interested community members. First of all, to give them detailed information about what our budget assumptions are, where I think we're headed, and just to have that initial informational meeting, and that would be followed up by just some brainstorming sessions, get some ideas from people as to, where could these cuts from. The answers are not going to be easy because Fowlerville, just like many school districts and many businesses and everything else in the state, have been tightening their belts and spending less and getting creative. The cuts that we would make at this point are going to be painful. They're going to be difficult to come by, but we're going to be starting that process. Normally, we'll start our budget process in early January. This year, we're going to be starting that in October, and with today being count day, we're looking at these numbers now. They're not official numbers, but they'll be pretty close. The next piece of this is for the state lawmakers to make a decision on what our per pupil foundation cut's going to be, and we'll have those two pieces, which are big revenue, and we'll go from there.
And when do you plan on having some recommendations for the board on what you think should be done based on this input?
Well, initially before Thanksgiving. Now, that may not be the full slate of recommendations. Again, that would be what we talk about at that point would be recommendations related to this school year, the 9-10 school year, because I am anticipating we cannot really just set on this issue, spend down half of the fund balance, because the 10-11 school year is not going to be better. We're anticipating additional cuts in our per pupil foundation, and I don't see any reason that we would think that our enrollment is going to flatten out. That's going to continue to go down. So tough times in Fowlerville.
But as bad as it looks this year, it looks even worse for next year unless the state does something different in providing extra money to schools, or at least not holding the line,
yes,
as opposed to further cutting.
Yep, exactly.
But I guess as a superintendent, you have to hope for the best and plan for the worst.
That's a very good way to word it, Steve. And that's, they tend.
Gallows humor.
I get ribbed. Mr. Booja and others, are calling me Mr. Doom and Gloom. They say you're just like Mr. Elverson. It's all doom and gloom. But you sit in the seat for a while, and you have to be prepared for the worst. And unfortunately, many times the worst ends up happening.
You did mention to me in a conversation we had that there is a bright side that Fowlerville does attract additional students.
Sure. This year, we campaigned pretty hard in getting advertisements out and for our schools of choice and as a slogan and all this stuff. We ended up attracting more schools of choice students than we ever have. We're up around that 160 number, and that's up about 30 students from last year. So we are attracting some schools of choice students from our neighboring districts. Especially a bright spot is the high number of schools of choice kindergarten students that we have coming in the district for our all-day kindergarten program. So that's it could have been worse. I can't say I'm not disappointed in the number that we've ended up with here, but it is what it is. So
but I think we can make an assumption that a lot of them that left didn't leave because they didn't like Fowlerville. It was some personal economic decisions like it's occurring a lot of other places.
Yeah, and that's our hope too. I think Fowlerville provides a quality education. I'm gonna be working with the principals to survey some of the folks that have left our district, just to find out if they did leave us for another school district, find out what piece was missing that we didn't provide, and that's always helpful when we look at our programs and how we serve the families of the community.
Well, on a different note, you came here, was it in April?
Yep, beginning of April.
So you haven't exactly been here for a long time, but enough to make some impressions. How you feel for your first half year or so, other than you wished, I assume that there was a little more money in the piggy bank.
Yeah. Other than the money woes that we're experiencing, as a community, and certainly the school district as a community, has been a very, very pleasant experience for me. Lots of good people, and I'm getting to know more and more people on a first name basis. Spending one of my things that I'm doing to help me to understand, because this is really all about teaching and learning. You know, we talk about money, and that's you know, you got to have money, but it's really about teaching and learning. So I'm taking time every week to spend an hour, you know, 2 times a week I go and schedule a visit, and I had my first one this last week, and spent some time in a classroom, and boy, that's a feel good. I got to sit down with the kids. It was a 6th grade classroom, and we got to sit down. I got to interact with the kids and with the teacher and help with the lesson, and that's what this all comes down to. And so, you know, in general, my experience here has been real positive. Very friendly community, and the longer I'm here, the more comfortable I feel, and the better I feel, you know, when you start to know people. So it's been good.
Well, great. Well, it's good to have you aboard, and we'll wish for the best. Thank you, and talk to you later.
All right, thanks.